My father-in-law, Julian, was the definition of a silver fox. You know the type. A man who carries his age not as a burden, but as a badge of distinction. At 62, he possessed a gravitational pull that men half his age couldn't hope to replicate. He didn't just walk into a room, he occupied it. But before we continue, if you enjoy real-life stories that explore the boundaries of the heart, we need your support. Help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell. I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Let me know in the comments below. He had come to stay with us in our suburban home for a few days, citing some vague business meetings in the city. But frankly, I didn't care about the reason. I just liked having his energy in the house. As fate, or perhaps misfortune, would have it, my husband Mark had to fly out for a conference the very next morning. It felt like a cruel joke of timing. But before I tell you how a quiet week turned into the most transformative experience of my life, I have a small favor to ask. If you are someone who believes that true stories are often stranger and more passionate than fiction, we need your support. Help us reach our goal of 3,000 subscribers. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a confession. I'm also curious, where are you listening from tonight? Let me know in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. I thought I was prepared for a quiet week. I thought I would be playing the role of the dutiful daughter-in-law, making coffee, making small talk about the weather, and perhaps watching the evening news in polite silence. But everything changed that Tuesday morning. I went upstairs to call Julian for breakfast. The house was still settling, the morning light filtering through the blinds and dusty beams. I reached the guest room and noticed the door was ajar. Just a crack, but enough to signal that he was awake. I didn't knock. It was a reflex, a moment of domestic autopilot. I pushed the door open, the words "coffee is ready" poised on my lips, but they died in my throat. I stopped dead in my tracks. Julian was lying on top of the covers, wearing nothing but a pair of dark-fitted boxer briefs. I froze. It wasn't just the nudity. It was the sheer, undeniable condition of him. For a man of his age, he was spectacular. Lean muscle, broad shoulders, and a stillness that felt predatory. But what made my breath hitch wasn't just his physique. It was the undeniable outline beneath the fabric of his underwear. It was impossible to ignore, a testament to a morning vitality I hadn't expected. And then, the worst, or perhaps the best, thing happened. He saw me. Most men would have scrambled for a sheet. They would have apologized, flushed red, and created a chaotic scene of embarrassment. Julian did none of that. He simply turned his head, locked eyes with me, and offered a slow, lazy smile. It wasn't a smile of apology. It was a smile of acknowledgement. He didn't cover himself. He didn't move. He just let me look. A wave of heat, sharp and electric, shot from my stomach up to my cheeks. My knees felt like they had turned to water. My mouth went completely dry, yet I felt a hunger wake up inside me that I hadn't felt in years. I pretended, poorly, that I hadn't seen a thing. "Excuse me," I mumbled, my voice trembling, and I backed out of the room. The door shut a little too quickly. I practically ran to the kitchen, but something inside me had been activated. A switch had been flipped. I spent the rest of the day trying to scrub that image from my mind, trying to convince myself it was just shock, just an awkward moment. But every time I blinked, I saw him. The confidence, the size, the smile. In the kitchen, my hands shook as I poured the coffee. The porcelain rattled against the saucer. When he finally came down, dressed in a crisp button-down and slacks, he sat at the table with that same serene expression. We talked about the news, about the weather, acting as if nothing had happened. But the air between us was heavy. It was a charged silence, a thick tension that hummed like a high-voltage wire. It was the beginning of a game, even if neither of us had read the rules aloud yet. That night, I went to bed early, desperate to escape the atmosphere of the living room, but sleep was impossible. I lay there in the dark, tossing and turning, replaying every micro-expression on his face. The way he looked at me, comfortable, yet provocative. My body was reacting to the memory alone, betraying my marriage vows with every pulse. Suddenly, I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate steps on the hardwood. They stopped outside my bedroom door. My heart hammered against my ribs. I saw the shadow of feet under the doorframe. For a second, one terrifying, thrilling second, I swore he was going to turn the handle and walk in. But he didn't. He just stood there. A pause that lasted an eternity. Then the footsteps receded. That hesitation was more intimate than a touch. It told me he was thinking about it. It told me he knew I was awake, waiting. I was ready, though I had no idea how far this would go. The next morning, I decided to test the waters. I wore a silk robe, light, airy, something that clung in the right places but looked innocent enough if you didn't look too closely. I told myself it was for comfort, but deep down, I knew I wanted a reaction. I found him in the living room, reading a book. When I walked in, he lowered the book slowly. His eyes traveled from my face down to the hem of the robe and back up. He smiled, that same slow, conspiratorial smile. "Sleep well?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "Not really," I replied, the double entendre slipping out before I could check myself. I felt restless. He held my gaze for a beat too long. "Restlessness can be dangerous," he said. "Softy. Or interesting." My insides trembled. If you've ever been in a situation where the forbidden felt like the only thing that mattered, drop a comment below. I need to know if I'm the only one who loses their mind when the tension gets this high. After breakfast, I started cleaning the kitchen. He walked in to help, picking up the mugs to place them in the cabinet. The kitchen wasn't small, but suddenly it felt like a closet. We ended up standing next to each other at the sink, our hands brushed. It might have been an accident, or perhaps not. The heat from that simple contact shot up my arm like a lightning bolt. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. We stood there, shoulder to shoulder, breathing in the same rhythm. We exchanged a long, sidelong glance. It was a silent pact. No kiss, not yet. But something in me cracked open. I wanted more, and he knew it. Later that afternoon, the house felt even quieter. I was in the hallway, organizing the linen closet, crouched down to reach the bottom shelf. The space was narrow. I heard him approach. He didn't ask me to move. He squeezed behind me. His body brushed against my back, his thighs against me, his chest grazing my shoulder. It was a deliberate friction. The contact made the hair on my arm stand up. I stopped moving. I didn't say a word. Then, I felt his hand. It landed on my waist. It wasn't a grab. It was a caress, firm, possessive, his fingers lingering longer than was socially acceptable. My entire body seized, up in anticipation. I turned my head, looking up at him. For the first time, the tension transmuted into raw, declared desire. His eyes were dark, his breathing slightly elevated. He leaned in, his warm breath fanning across my neck. I closed my eyes, tilting my head back, offering myself. But then, he pulled back. He left me there, shivering in the hallway, confused and aching. I understood the game then. He wanted me to be the one to cross the final line. That night, God, can you feel the tension building just listening to this? I made my move. I put on a nightgown that was sheer enough to be scandalous under the right light. I pretended I needed a glass of water and went downstairs. The house was dark, save for the ambient light from the street lamps outside. Julian was in the kitchen. He was standing with his back to me, looking out the window into the backyard. He was barefoot, wearing pajama bottoms and a tight t-shirt that showed off that back I had admired earlier. When I stepped onto the tile, he turned. His eyes dropped to my nightgown. The fabric left little to the imagination in the moonlight. He didn't speak. He just stared, intense and focused, like a man who knows exactly what is about to happen. I walked to the sink, my heart pounding a rhythm in my ears. He moved to stand behind me. I could feel the heat radiating off him. Then, his hand reached out and covered mine on the countertop. I closed my eyes and took a deep, shaky breath. When I opened them, he was still there, waiting. I turned my hand over, lacing my fingers through his, skin against skin, rough palm against soft. That was the moment, the point of no return. I turned around slowly. We were face to face, so close our chests were almost touching. He looked at me with a hunger that was terrifying and beautiful. My hand moved to his chest, feeling the heavy thud of his heart, then up to his neck. I pulled him down. The kiss wasn't tentative. It was an explosion. It was slow, filled with a contained urgency that we had been bottling up for 2 days. My back hit the cold marble of the counter as he pressed into me. His hands were everywhere, sliding down my spine, cupping my hips, bunching the fabric of my nightgown until it was gathered at my waist. I was already wet. I was trembling. I knew this was wrong by every societal standard, but it felt perfect. It felt inevitable. He lifted me onto the counter effortlessly, my legs wrapped around him, pulling him closer, needing to eliminate every millimeter of space between us. He pulled back for a second, looking me in the eye, a silent question. "Are you sure?" In response, I pulled his head back down. The kiss deepened. His hands explored me with a maddening, experienced calm. When his fingers found the damp heat between my thighs, I moaned into his mouth. The world outside ceased to exist. There was no husband, no marriage, no rules, just this kitchen, the moonlight, and the man breaking me apart. In a haze of lust, we moved. He was relentless, taking his time to worship every inch of me while I unraveled. The silence of the house was broken only by the sound of our breathing and the wet sounds of pleasure. I felt the desire cresting, intense and urgent, blinding me to everything else. And then, the sound of a key in the front door. My heart stopped. The blood drained from my face. The front door opened. Mark, my husband. He was home a day early. Panic surged through me, cold and sharp. I tried to push Julian away, but he held me firm. We froze, looking toward the hallway. Mark walked into the kitchen, his suitcase dropping from his hand with a heavy thud. But here is where the story takes a turn you won't expect. Mark didn't yell. He didn't scream. He didn't charge at his father. He stood there, staring at us, his wife on the kitchen counter, legs wrapped around his father, disheveled and exposed. The shock on his face slowly morphed into something else. He looked at me, flushed and panting. He looked at his father, whose hand was still resting possessively on my thigh. Mark's eyes darkened. He took a step forward, not in anger, but in curiosity. It was an invitation, a silent recognition of a desire none of us had dared to speak. Julian didn't step away. He looked at his son, then back at me, and then he kissed my neck, right there in front of him. Mark watched, his breath hitching. I saw the bulge in Mark's trousers strain against the fabric. "Don't stop," Mark whispered, his voice rough. "If you like stories where the script gets flipped and the unexpected becomes the reality, please leave a comment. I need to know if you think we were crazy, or if we were just finally being honest." After that night, the world didn't end. It expanded. There was no fight. There was a conversation, yes, but it wasn't about betrayal. It was about boundaries, and how we wanted to dissolve them. Mark admitted that seeing us had unlocked something primal in him. He didn't feel jealousy. He felt compersion, joy in my pleasure, and a desire to be part of that intense energy. From that moment on, nothing was forbidden. The connection between the three of us grew organically, like vines intertwining. They approached me in different ways. Julian was firm, experienced, taking control with a confidence that made me melt. Mark was eager, passionate, loving me with a familiarity that grounded me. Imagine the sensation of being the sole focus of two men who adore you. While one held me, the other tasted me. Hands were everywhere. I was surrounded by affection, by testosterone, by worship. The energy circulated between us, a closed loop of pleasure. It was intense, but strangely natural, as if we had been waiting for this dynamic our whole lives. I was completely surrendered. One would be behind me, whispering in my ear, his hands on my hips, while the other was on his knees before me. My body was a map they were both exploring simultaneously. There was no competition, only collaboration. They took turns, they switched positions, they watched each other with me. When I reached my climax that first time with both of them, I couldn't tell you who triggered it. It was a collective release. I cried out, shattering into a million pieces, only to be held together by 4 strong arms. The next morning, I woke up in the middle of our king-sized bed, sandwiched between father and son. No one said a word, but the dynamic had shifted permanently. Mark reached under the sheet to hold my hand. Julian brushed a stray hair from my forehead. We had created a silent code. No guilt, only freedom. The days that followed were a blur of domestic bliss and erotic discovery. A touch on the shoulder while pouring juice. A kiss on the neck while watching TV. A triple embrace in the hallway. I felt more like a woman than I ever had in my life, I was the queen of this strange, beautiful kingdom. That afternoon, we sat on the sofa, me in the middle. The TV was on, but ignored. Julian traced patterns on my thigh. Mark played with my fingers. The air was thick with comfort and latent heat. It wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional. We were in sync. We moved to the bedroom without speaking. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched them approach. Julian, the patriarch, touched my face with a tenderness that broke my heart, while Mark, my partner, slowly peeled my blouse from my shoulders. The contrast between them, the aged wisdom and the youthful vigor, was intoxicating. I lay back, closing my eyes, feeling safe, protected, desired. This wasn't just sex, it was presence. It was a deep, abiding connection that defied every label society tried to place on us. If you are feeling this connection, if you understand the power of breaking taboos to find happiness, subscribe now. There are so many stories hidden behind closed doors, and I want to share them all with you. That evening, we sat by the fireplace. The flames danced on the walls, mimicking the heat inside us. Julian had his arm around me. Mark rested his head on my lap. We found a peace that night that I didn't know was possible. We weren't just a scandal. We were a family, redefined. We were building a history made of desire, respect, and radical honesty. Over the next few months, our routine solidified. We found a balance between the mundane and the extraordinary. Shared coffees, silent conversations, furtive touches that promised pleasure later in the dark. I felt alive, vibrant. I learned that love isn't a finite resource. It doesn't run out. It multiplies. They showed me, father and son, that passion can take many forms. Today, we are more than lovers. We are accomplices in a unique story. I know this lifestyle isn't for everyone. I know people would judge us if they knew. But for me, it was liberation. I shed my shame like old skin. If you've listened this far, maybe you're ready to question your own boundaries. Maybe you're ready to embrace your own desires, no matter how forbidden they seem. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it sparked something in you. If it did, please subscribe to the channel. I'd love to know where you are watching from. Leave your city and country in the comments. Tell me your name, maybe your age, so I can get to know you better. Subscribe for more stories that explore the limits of the heart. Sending you a big kiss. Goodbye.